party started, and I, of course, do not, I'm in the process of pulling up the agenda, but it's right behind me.
Okay.
So I believe,
You're going to turn it back over to me.
oh, I'm going to turn it back over to you to do your
Yes.
thing. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairwoman. Good evening, everyone. To minimize distractions during the meeting, please silence your cell phone. If you are not actively participating in the meeting, the city reserves the right to turn off video or mute participants. When the chair calls for public comment, please approach the podium to indicate you wish to speak. Virtual participants should use the raised hand function to indicate you wish to speak. Please leave your virtual hand raised until you are called upon. The primary format for accessing or participating in this meeting is in person at City Hall. Virtual access to view or participate in the meeting cannot be guaranteed. The chat function will not be monitored. If you have any trouble, the meeting can be viewed on the city's YouTube channel or cable channel 25. And when you are at the podium, please state your name and zip code before speaking. All comments are limited to 3 minutes. I'll turn it back over to Lisa.
All right. As always, our first order, well, first of all, we have quorum, yay. Our first order of business is approving the meeting minutes from last month, April 14th. Do we have a motion?
I move.
I will second, although I will say there's some spelling errors.
Okay, I'll run it through spell check. Thanks.
Yep,
It was done real quick.
I could tell. So, but thank you, the content was good. It is the moment for public comment.
The vote, did everybody vote?
Oh, did we all vote on approving the minutes for April? Please vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? I voted aye also. Thank you. Do we have any public comment online or elsewhere?
Does not look like it.
And since there's nobody online either, can I just say a word about public comment? Because we talked about it last week, and I want to make sure that you all have a time to respond if you so choose. And I think that the right time for that is during the table.
Roundtable
Round
reports.
table, I'm sorry, at the end, say, if you have time, we've agendized time for you to speak, at every meeting, so if you want to use that time to say, but, and especially it was what I think it's going to get, how crowded it will be in a few weeks or maybe next month, that if we take that time, it's going to be forever meeting. But if you have, you've received emails, as you were asking earlier, if you received emails and you want to bring them up, please feel free to use that time for that as well. As I was saying, I want to hear from the community. I want to hear your impressions. We don't really have a chance to do that during the public comment section, but I think that would be a good opportunity to, take your time allotted to you to speak. And I don't think we have a time limit. I'm not saying allotted, but, okay, so I hope, if that will help hear you.
Thank you. Format of the meetings, we're finally figuring it out. All right, thank you. Our next item is our main agenda item. Vicki, if you have a presentation, I am looking forward to seeing it.
I do. Thank you for the opportunity. Appreciate it. I know this has been a long-term agenda item, so I really
From John.
From John. I know.
Here.
Oh, I forgot to share.
A little sad about that.
I know. Maybe he's watching.
Hopefully. Well, really grateful for the opportunity to just spend 10-ish minutes talking about my personal favorite topic.
Did you share the whole window? I think you want to just share the app or the presentation. Or share that window. But you're sharing this one.
Am I?
Yeah, you're on the wrong one.
Oh,
You're real close though.
Yep.
Oh, boy.
real close.
I appreciate it. That's.
Yeah, there you go.
There we go. Sorry. My
Oh,
bad.
good.
Okay.
So really excited to talk about the intersection of parks, recreation, and public health. I'll just really quickly touch on what is public health, because I think we all think we know. But if the pandemic taught us something, it's that we don't know. I'll talk a little bit about the connection between public health, parks, and recreation, and then talk about some real local examples of how there's considerable opportunities for collaboration and connection between Parks and Rec and public health. Next slide, please. Thank you. So public health encompasses many, many, many different things that we're probably all familiar with, from water to maternal and child health to prevention of cancer, for example. And it can be defined in many different ways, but the two definitions that we tend to cling to as an interdisciplinary profession are: it's the science and art of preventing disease, prolonging life, and promoting health. And it's what we do together as a society to ensure the conditions in which everybody can be healthy. I'll talk a little bit more as we go, but conditions come up quite a bit. And thinking about how we arrange a community that has opportunities for health and well-being is sort of the focus of our public health work here in Douglas County and Lawrence. Next slide, please. It's important to note that public health can take many forms, just like Parks and Rec takes many, many different forms. But some features are common across public health efforts, including that we're truly interdisciplinary. My background's in behavioral psychology. I work with epidemiologists. I work with communications folks. It's truly interdisciplinary. It's science and data-driven. It's equity-centered in that it's focused on amplifying when populations experience preventable and disproportionately poor health outcomes. Hi, John. Because of inequitable conditions for health and well-being. And by inequitable conditions, we mean just different opportunities and barriers that are experienced that get in the way or support health and well-being. And we're also prevention focused. So rather than waiting and being focused only on when diabetes or cancer occurs, we really think about how do you create communities that prevent those things in the first place. On the next slide, I use this figure quite a bit to talk about what drives health, and I think this is central to creating a connection between public health and parks and recreation. In the United States, we tend to think about health in terms of healthcare, right? And we certainly fund things that way. If we created a figure around funding, it would be 99.9% healthcare, and all the rest would fall into that 0.1%. But when we actually unpack what we know drives health, those things are more focused on socioeconomic factors like education and income, the physical environment, which includes access to parks, health behaviors, and we tend to focus on a few key ones, including tobacco use, physical activity, and healthy eating, and then you have health care. And so while this figure does a nice job of describing the many factors that go into and drive health, it sort of presents it as a layer, right? That they're all separate. But we also know, as you'll see on the next slide, that they're interactive. And really we see health happen at the confluence of those things. And I think for this conversation, the intersection of thinking through socioeconomic factors, health, such as income, community safety, health behaviors, specifically physical activity, and the built environment inclusive of access to parks is really where you find the interconnection between public health and parks and recreation. So to make it less conceptual, on the next slide, you will see a really clear statement. Research tells us that the connection between public health and parks and recreation is quite clear. So access to parks and green spaces are linked to physical activity, which from a public health perspective matter to us because that influences the development of chronic disease. We also know that those connections, there are connections to stress reduction, mental health and well-being, and decreased social isolation. And then increasingly, we're thinking in public health, though I think we're laggards in realizing this, that parks are really critical to environmental health, particularly around air quality and heat mitigation. And I'll actually close up talking about heat mitigation. So I mentioned that we are data-driven. City Health is a resource that we use quite a bit to understand data around health and well-being. And I chose to present some of the data that you can get on City Health at any time. It gets down to the census tract. And as you can see, hopefully, although that ends up being quite small, they list a number of key indicators for each domain. And importantly, under physical environment, you'll find access to parks. So let's look a little bit at that.
Is that a website?
It is. It's City Health Dashboard.
one word, I mean,
I think so.
We
Yeah.
can share it.
Yeah.
If you can get it and send it out to the board.
Sure.
Okay, so this figure shows at the census tract level access to parks here in Lawrence. It is measuring access to parks in terms of within a 10-minute walk. The lighter color are better outcomes. So actually at the very lightest, we have some census tracts that have 100% of the population being able to walk within 10 minutes to a park or a park facility. And the darker blue, which fades to 0, actually, are those census tracts where nobody living in that census tract necessarily has access to a park within 10-minute walk. So one thing that you might just keep an eye on are some of the census tracts to the right-hand side. Throughout the 3 graphics that I showed, darker always means worse, and lighter always means better. So just maybe keep an eye on maybe where you think you are. Also, it ends up being really hard to see, but there are orange dots that reflect Lawrence Parks Recreation and Culture's community centers.
Okay.
So the one that you're over right now is the community building at 11th-ish in Vermont. My mapping skills aren't precise here.
Yep.
That's Holcomb. The one to your right, that one is Prairie Park. The one straight-ish up is East Lawrence Rec Center, and the one all the way at the far left is Sports Pavilion. Ish. Again, my own mapping
I use
placement
it.
isn't.
Not GIS.
No, I didn't use GIS, but one could. So on the next slide, you'll see the same census tracts and the same little dots. This tells you a little bit about the percentage of people in our community who do not engage in any leisure time physical activity. So they are asked in the last 30 days, how many times did you engage in no leisure time physical activity? And I think that ranges from a pretty low percentage all the way to 25%.
14 to 25.
14, thank you. I thought I had it memorized, but no such luck. 14.
Okay, so it's not a 0 to 100.
It's not
Okay.
0 to 100 in this case.
Okay.
In our community, it ranges from 14% to 25%. Of in no physical activity. So it's inactivity. So again, blue is still bad because 25% there are telling you they don't engage in physical activity. And then on the next slide, you see the percentage of children who live in poverty. And here we have a range that actually goes all the way to 43%. So those very darkest.
0 to 43.
Thank you.
Yes.
0 to 43% are children who live in poverty. So those far darkest areas are really at 43%, which is really quite high. But sorry.
Oh, I have a quick question about the scale, because
Yeah.
the orange bar with so there's a line here that
Yeah.
says 10.8. Is that the mean?
That is
Median?
Lawrence overall.
Okay.
I don't think it's a mean.
It's something.
The aggregate percentage.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, okay. Thank you.
Yep.
Thank you.
Good questions. So hopefully you can see that connection that I mentioned earlier that was kind of conceptual, right? That socioeconomic status like poverty and the built environment like access to parks and physical activity are all interrelated. Is it a perfect relationship? Not really, but are there relationships that we should be attuned to and think through as we make decisions in the future? But moreover, think about how do we partner as a community to create a community where there are conditions and opportunities for health and well-being. These are important. So I'll move us on and close out by talking about some local opportunities and how a connection between public health and parks and recreation might be strategic and helpful by highlighting 3 potential opportunities. The first is our community health improvement plan, and then I'll talk through some evidence-based programs and our work to promote, protect, and prevent public health. So we, in October of last year, launched a community health improvement plan. If you'll go to the next slide, if you don't mind handing those out, those would be great. The Community Health Improvement Plan, or CHIP, as we affectionately refer to this as, is a 5-year strategic plan for health and well-being for our community. It's important to note that it is not LDCPH's strategic plan. We have our own strategic plan. Instead, it's really intended to be a document that reflects what happens if we work together to create conditions where people can have more opportunities and fewer barriers to health and well-being. Our community health improvement plan has 6 sort of focus areas that include access to health services, anti-poverty, behavioral health, birth outcomes, food security, and housing. There are several points of intersection, I think, with Parks and Rec. Importantly, on the next slide, you'll see some of our work around behavioral health. Behavioral health highlights the totality of a person's whole experience in behavioral health, mental health, and substance abuse. And although it might be not intuitive to think about this as a place for Parks and Rec to consider, one of the strategy areas that they're focusing on is prioritizing prevention to promote social and emotional well-being. And we know that access to parks and the programming that's done through Parks and Recreation are a key part of that as we look forward. That part of the plan is still undergoing some revision, so I think there's opportunities to contribute to that work if you are interested. So the other example that I wanted to drive us to are related to evidence-based programs and practices. Over the last several years, we've been really interested in advancing a policy package in the city of Lawrence that's referred to as City Health. It's actually the same name as the dashboard, but they're different initiatives, which is fantastic. City Health provides a package of 12 policies which are identified to promote health. These 12 policies have a demonstrated evidence of impact on health and well-being in communities in which they're implemented. They also were selected because they're largely under a city jurisdiction, so they're influenceable in ways that things like Medicaid expansion aren't at the city level. They're also pretty replicable and pragmatic in nature. One of those policies, one of the 12, is related to green space. And the evidence-based policies that are included under this package include assurance of access to parks, investment in access to parks, but also assurance of green canopy space as well as overall green space. And if you think about it in those terms, that actually connects to several of the objectives and key performance indicators, hopefully, that are outlined in the city's strategic plan, specifically under safe and welcoming neighborhoods, as well as unmistakable identity. So thinking through how we are collaborative and supportive of those policies, I think is a critical opportunity as well. And lastly, I'll close, and I'm sure I've exceeded the cavalier 10 minutes I said I would take. But I do want to just think about how we're looking forward. As I mentioned at the outset, some of our mission in public health is to promote, protect, and prevent. Increasingly, we are growing concerned about heat and heat-related illnesses that are, in fact, increasing in our communities. These maps, I forgot to put a source on here, are from CDC's Heat and Health Tracker, which will no longer be updated. So we're working to create our own surveillance of heat and heat-related illness at the health department. But one of the things that we know is so critical to being protective around heat and heat-related illness are protection of green space and canopy. So we are interested in collaborating on those efforts and also interested in thinking through how do we collect data so that we know more about what's happening in those dark orange spots on the bottom graph. So the top graph shows you the state of Kansas and the total number of heat-related days from August of last year. And the bottom graph shows Douglas County specifically, and you can note where Lawrence is within Douglas County. And the CDC actually, so these dots are not my dots, the CDC uploads information about availability of parks because we know that parks are so critical to, parks and green space are going to be so critical to thinking through how do we prevent and protect health from heat-related illness as we go forward. So that's, I think, hopefully covering some of the data that we hope to share about the connection of public health and parks. Happy to answer any questions, but again, thank you so much for the opportunity to talk about this.
Yeah.
Thank you, John, for suggesting it.
Yeah.
So you mentioned that city health is a city-driven policy, but is that being presented to the city?
We have talked a while ago to the city manager who had some interest in it. We actually have considerable coverage of those 12 policies. I think that strengthening the policy around green canopy requirements is a potential opportunity to consider, as well as shoring up investments in parks and recreation, I think would be another example of a policy that would be constructive. But there are also a couple of tobacco-related policies that would work, and some tenant protections around housing. It's a pretty comprehensive 12 policy package.
Okay. And those hit other key performance indicators?
They do. They really do.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
I don't really have it's not really a question, but rather a comment. You highlighted location of parks and particular populations like children in poverty. And then also, of course, the intersectionality of so many of these areas. And I guess I just wanted to sort of add on to that, because of course, children have a much harder time getting to parks when they aren't nearby. So then you need to think about transportation and infrastructure for people getting there. Of course, as a bicyclist, I'm always wanting to talk about more ways to get by bike, and children with bicycles can get further. But another thought is the appeal of a park is going to allow a parent to feel better about allowing their child to use that park. So those two things, I think, are really important additional vectors that that would affect that as well. And also, so, having conversations with the transportation, metropolitan planning at the Douglas County level, as well as at the city level, I think is really important here as well.
Do we know if the improvements, investment in Lions Park, it's Lions Park, right? Where the splash pad, the new splash pad, has that increased, do we know? Has it increased use of
Of the park itself?
yeah?
Yeah, I don't know that we have necessarily data for that, but I do know that we have a general assumption of, not assumption, but anecdotal, I guess, evidence of the amount of use. Oh, thank you.
Come to the podium. Yeah, so the level of people showing up at Lions has significantly went up. So one, we have pickleball there. Two, we had the splash pad there. We're finishing the shelter renovation. So plus the playground. So you go out there on any given day and you'll usually see multiple families there. So highly used, parking lot's too small, but that's a good problem.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
I would throw another anecdote out there that I live close to the splash pad that was installed at 15th Street and Burroughs, and that's huge. It's so nice to have that there. I usually cut through at 14th through that park, and sometimes in the evenings when the splash pad is on and there's kids playing in there, we'll bike really slowly through the splash pad.
No bikes allowed.
Oh, I didn't read it. It was really small print. We're very careful. But yes, of course, we always avoid getting into it. But it's right along a bicycle path, so, or a
I see the
sidewalk.
temptation,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Anyway, but so yes, huge increase in the number of people at, not just at in the splash pad, but just year round, the nearby playground equipment that was installed has been very popular.
Do we know what kind of green space we have in those areas which were the most poverty?
Yeah, the first slide showed that, right?
Oh, the first slide showed it?
I have the parks facilities. I didn't overlay actual parks.
Oh, right.
So I think that would be a place, you probably already have that. But you can kind of, that would have to be explored a little bit more, for sure, to get a more full picture than I provided.
But that first slide was the gradient blue was, the lighter was a more walking within 10 minutes.
Yes.
10-minute walk to a
Yeah.
park.
Yeah.
So that showed that, and then you had the
So this is just
poverty.
general park access. I think the next one has the poverty.
This one?
Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's physical activity.
The next, yeah, so it's
And
the
then poverty.
first and the third compared to each other.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's showing a
Access.
high number of parks within a 10-minute walk in the East Lawrence area.
I was gonna share it again.
It's interesting that the.
No, you do the application window instead. There you go, because you're going to move around.
Yeah.
It's darker down, yeah.
Yeah.
Which,
Oh, because
Darker
that's
means
where-
it's farther away, right?
And this one.
The dark,
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
the
unwalkable.
longer the walk,
Yeah,
or no park at all.
yeah, longer, yeah.
You know, I think that also includes, one of those census tracts includes things like Hidden Valley and the Jayhawk Club, which are expansive green spaces, but they would not be considered public.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Golf courses.
Yeah. But not necessarily a tree canopy, right?
So Vicki, I was noticing on the slide that shows the poverty, maybe that was the second slide, you know, like the East Lawrence Rec Center is right there. And yet, there's a population right by there that's inactive.
Right.
So the question is, are there any evidence-based strategies to increase use of park facilities in those kind of neighborhoods?
Yeah, I think that the ones that come to mind are really about pairing the availability of a facility with the availability of accessible programming, so that it's not you don't have a build it and they will come approach, but rather a build it, support it, and then they will come. And make sure it's fairly barrier-free. And barriers can look like a lot of different things. They can look like cost. They can look like time of day. They can look like, do they have a parent to help them get there? In the CHIP, we're really focused on single female-headed households. And a group of people that are defined as asset-limited, income-constrained, but employed. And those folks really struggle, and I think that's who I think of when I think of a kid who maybe lives fairly close, but has to stay home because mom doesn't get off until 8 p.m., right? Or you know, has a job that keeps them at work a lot. And those are real barriers, right? So the build it and they will come doesn't work. It has to be accompanied by supports and resources and programs, I think.
It'd be interesting to see if there are any communities that have been super intentional about reducing barriers, not just for kids, but for adults, in terms of hours open or the types of things that are available. We know we do some great things, but there's always room for improvement, especially in the harder to reach populations.
Yeah, you know, I was talking to somebody, in a different city, and we were talking about YMCA and so on and so forth, and he said, yeah, I go to the Y because they have daycare. I can work out while my kids being taken care of. That's really
Yeah.
support, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
Yeah, or something like the East Lawrence Rec Center where you know there's staff there, so you feel comfortable letting your kid walk there if they can.
I don't think that other person's online anymore, so I don't think we have public comment. They dropped off, it looks like.
You know, I was on the health board, and of course, being on this board. And I just would like to see more connections, because, empirically, there is a connection, but we're separate departments, separate city, county.
Yeah.
And you should all have that.
Having Vicki on the board,
Yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely.
yeah.
I did send the dashboard to everyone, so you should have that.
Thank you.
Oh, thank you.
So,
Yeah,
Thank you, Vicki.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
yeah, thank you so much.
We'll continue the conversation.
So our next item, and there being no public comment, the World Cup is coming. Ruth, tell us about it.
World Cup is coming.
All right, we'll take it from here.
well, no, I gotta share. It's not, let me move that over.
Oh, you can do that too, and then we'll just control it.
Yeah. Okay. Oh, where'd my,
Yeah, sure.
Zoom.
hey, there, I'm learning, right?
Good, I'm glad
Doing it.
I'm not doing that part.
This mouse is wild.
it's not.
It is, it's not,
How can you make this?
Oh, there it is.
you're, go over to the
Well, I know,
screen.
but it'd be nice to see it there, but, okay.
Oh, you can pull it back open.
You minimize it.
Oh,
I minimized
You
it.
can drive. This is great. So Luis and I have given this presentation a few times, and yeah, I'm so excited to give it to you all, and I could talk about this forever, so I'll try and keep it to, a few hours.
What is your job?
Oh, I'm Ruth DeWitt with Explore Lawrence, and Explore Lawrence has a lot to do, we've, been involved in the World Cup planning because, as we'll get into here in a second, it's going to involve a lot of visitors coming to town. So next, what I'll do here is our agenda. I'll give an overview briefing of the World Cup, sort of size and scale. Luis is going to walk us through the city and county effort that is going on right now as we speak to prepare. Luis and I are co-leaders with Derek Kwan of the Culture and Experience branch that he'll explain. So he'll talk us through some of our objectives, and then we'll take some feedback afterwards. But I'm going to start with about a 3-minute video, which can sort of summarize everything much more than I can, and with a lot more sizzle.
The FIFA World Cup is coming to the soccer capital of America in the summer of 2026. Kansas City has a long history of game-changing sports moments, and this will add even more fuel to the momentum.
We're starting all over here.
The soccer capital of America in the summer of 2026. Kansas City has a long history of game-changing sports moments, and this will add even more fuel to the momentum that's been propelling our city forward over the last decade. This is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity for our region and surrounding communities, from the West Plains of Kansas to the mighty Mississippi in eastern Missouri. To make the most of this opportunity, we'll need to unite as a region. Hosting the FIFA World Cup 26 is projected to create $650 million in direct event impact. Plus, it's an opportunity to deliver Kansas City magic, rise on the world stage, and leave a lasting legacy. The regional and bi-state investments we're making today will help us make a long-lasting impact on the region. This will also ensure we provide a safe, seamless experience, whether you're a fan, visitor, or local. This is our time to show the world what we already know, that we're unstoppable together. After all, we're talking about hosting the biggest sporting event on the planet. And with more than 5 billion viewers expected to tune in worldwide, nothing else even comes close. While you may be familiar with the FIFA World Cups of the past, this one will feature more teams, more matches, more fans, and even more soccer than ever before. In 2026, 48 nations will come together to play 104 total matches. Those matches take place in 16 host cities in 3 countries. And it's the first time in 30 years that FIFA World Cup matches will be played on American soil. Kansas City will host 6 matches, including a quarterfinal featuring 2 of the 8 best teams in the world. Here's what those matchups look like in the FIFA World Cup 2022. The entirety of the FIFA World Cup in Kansas City will take place in the 26-day period between June 16th and July 11th, 2026. Keep in mind that the Kansas City region isn't just hosting games either. We're home to many world-class sports venues and training facilities. Plus, we're perfectly situated 3 hours from the coast. Teams will be training here and could be staying here too. We're in the running to host base camps, a team's home away from home where they stay and train between matches. Altogether, more than 500,000 visitors are expected to visit the KC region in the span of a month, and they'll all want to experience the culture and passion our region offers. With so many visitors and so much soccer action, the excitement can't just be contained to the stadium. That's why we're planning fan activations like FIFA Fan Festival, where soccer fans can unite to watch games and more. And if you can't make it downtown, don't worry. You can still be part of the action. Other activations will unfold across the entire region. More details and announcements about the FIFA World Cup 26 Kansas City will continue to come. Visit kansascityfwc26.com.
Cool. So there was a lot packed into that time, and I want to just highlight a few key takeaways. You heard that it's more matches, a bigger tournament than ever. The regional impact, $650 million. That's direct spending. That means someone comes, goes out to dinner, buys a T-shirt. That doesn't count, job creation and those other things. The scale of visitation, I think, is something we just can't even get our heads around. 650,000 visitors they're projecting to Kansas City. Does anyone know the current population of Kansas City? 500,000 people. So we're doubling the population of KC in that time. One of the statistics that really hits home for me is when we have a Super Bowl, someone will have a ticket and they estimate about 5 people come in market with the person who has the ticket. So it's someone, like this past year, they wanted to go on Bourbon Street, they want to hang out, they want to get the jerseys, they want to see the vibe. In the World Cup, that's 1 in 20. So most of the visitors will never, ever go to a match. So we're doing 4 times the Super Bowl, 6 times over in that 28-day span. So it's just enormous. In terms of our market, we know that we're going to get compression with hotel rooms, Airbnbs, tents, all kinds of things happening that we're planning for. Right now, half of the hotel rooms in Kansas City are already under contract. That means it's a little fluid. FIFA will contract rooms and then take them away and move them around. But more than a year out, we're already seeing, shortages right in Kansas City. So KC26 has drawn a 2.5-hour radius around Kansas City where they expect sold-out hotel rooms and short-term rentals. So we're talking Salina, Wichita, even Des Moines, St. Louis. So it's just a huge, huge footprint. We have one sort of data point that can help us with this a tiny bit. Taylor Swift played in Arrowhead July 2nd and 3rd, 2023. And our Lawrence hotels had a 93 and 94% occupancy rate on those days. So we know that people will stay here and go into Arrowhead and come back. So it's not predictive, it's not really that informative, except we do have that one little thing that we can cling to. Arrowhead is going to look very different. It's closed right now, and it will be closed until football season opens. They have to extend 11 feet on either side to create a soccer pitch, and they're doing construction for drainage and things underneath. They're taking out some seats, and it's just going to look entirely different. Also, there will be security, major security, and press lay-down areas around Arrowhead. So how we think of it as tailgating, and that is not going to happen. So these visitors are going to need and it's going to be, you can't just show up without a ticket. I mean, you have to, so these 20 people who are with ticket holders are going to need places to watch these games. I think what I'm just trying to, and I just wanted to say one more point that was in the video. It's easy to miss this, but the tournament has been designed with 3 days between matches. So what that means is there's the match schedule, but so there will be a lot of traveling in between tournament games. So people will be having time to go, and that makes us very appealing. I think when you saw the map populate, you could see we were dead center. That makes us appealing for FIFA, but also for fans, so they can go here, there, and come back and have time to travel. It also means that Explore Lawrence and our regional partners are going to be trying to draw day trippers from Kansas City to Lawrence. So we're trying to make itineraries and ways for people to get here to spend the day, even if they, don't have a hotel room here. So my point of all this is we're getting it whether we are a base camp or not. And so I want to talk about base camps for a bit. I think there's a tendency for people to think, if we are named as a base camp site, then this will happen. But I think I've illustrated up until this point that this is happening whether we are awarded a base camp or not. A base camp is a team's home away from home. So the FIFA organization, about a year ago, in last June, created a catalog. This is how it works. So they made a catalog, and there were 24 sites on it, and those are released to the team managers and things like that, and they start shopping with this catalog. Rock Chalk Park was among those first. We were in version 1, so we were among the first 24 that was listed. Each base camp is paired with a hotel. Rock Chalk was originally paired with Stonehill and has recently just been recontracted with the Oread. The current training facility is the other one, and then the sporting training facility. We've been told it's highly unlikely, or we were, like the first part of the release was very skeptical that a site would have 3, a region would have 3 so close together, but it's starting to look that might not be the case, and our chances keep going up that we will be awarded one. So anyway, I'll go through the timeline here on the next slide. One quick thing about that last slide, you'll notice that where the sporting play is not a base camp site. That's because the sporting field is considered a T-1 location. So the teams that come in who are going to be playing in Arrowhead the next day will come, they will acclimate, they will have their practices, and then they'll play their match in Arrowhead and then, go back to their team base camp sites. So when will we know is the very big question. And in June of 2024, so a year ago, is when the first iteration of the brochure was released. This first part of 2025, they've been adding to the brochure. We've heard recently that they're actually capping the sites at 50 or 55, which means for 48 teams, we have a pretty good shot at landing this. This summer, we can expect a huge ramp up of team visitation. We won't always know when people are here. The Kansas City people, the KC-26 people have taken 8 teams through Kansas City facilities. 4 teams have been to Lawrence already. So we will see that traffic increase as they are, trying to put their selections together. The very, very late 25 is like when they do the draw for who's qualified. They're playing concurrently now and qualifying. The draw is kind of analogous to maybe like Selection Sunday to us. They will like get put in their groups and they'll get sort of their schedule. And then after that happens, they will start bidding for base camps. And they'll get that all sorted out in anywhere between January or up to March of 2026. So as you can see, this is way too massive to wait until we get a base camp or not to start planning. And so Luis is going to walk you through what we've been planning for about more or less a year already with Douglas County and the City of Lawrence and KU as well.
And just before I go to the slide, next slide, would you talk about what the impact is if we do get a base camp?
Oh, yeah, thank you. So a base camp will bring not just the team and the players, but they bring their trainers, their nutritionists, their families, and their fans. And we will be sort of, their home away from home. Not all the fans can afford to follow their team around, so they might be looking for a place to watch the games here in Lawrence if their team is, in Miami and then they're coming back. So we will have, a high concentration of one country's visitors if we are a base camp, as opposed to if we have just huge compression in the market. Although we have been told that people kind of sort and go on WhatsApp or other apps to say hey, the French are going to camp out in Lawrence. And so they'll all kind of congregate together. So they figure out where they all are. So, but anyway, if we are a base camp site, the estimates are a base camp will bring about 15,000 people with not all fans and all of that, but their publicists, their press, their public relations, their doctors, all of that will come. 26 players, I just learned. So they don't have to bring 26, but they all do in case there are injuries and things like that.
All right.
Yep.
So as Ruth mentioned, the city, county, and KU, since about October, before that they started convening meetings to create a structure, let me go to the next slide, that could cover all the requirements of FIFA, all the requirements as far as infrastructure, housing, economic security, transportation, safety, and we started convening and assigning what is called an incident command structure. And that is similar to a structure used in emergency management when, for instance, COVID happens, and there's a structure of reporting, not just for direction, but also reporting up that gets distributed among several agencies. So we are mimicking that as far as the structure of how we're dealing with the requirements of such a big event impacting us. Now, we're not using it as an emergency management tool, more as a structure. If emergency management is needed for a specific event, for a specific cause, for or something, that will have its own incident command structure, but this is the one overseeing the efforts that it will take. We will need we will need PD and fire, and we'll need mutual aid from outside because we may not have sufficient resources here. We will need infrastructure, housing, is going to be a big issue because of, what might happen in the rental market if people are holding their houses open for, for a couple of months and, and other things like, I don't want to give too many ideas. I'm going to back out here because who knows what. But, there are a lot of things to consider. So what we are co-chairs of, along with David Kwan from the Lead Center, is the Culture and Experiences branch. Let me just go over. I don't think you can read this too much. So here are all the branches.
That's for
So
effect. The other slide was for effect.
just
like
so
how
you see
many
the
things
enormity,
there are going
and doesn't even have all the people. This is a short list of people. It has tentacles that are far-reaching. But the outside of the operations and the top portion of this incident command center structure, we have 6 branches. We have safety and security. Again, they're overseeing, I'm not going to read all this, but they're overseeing, all the fire PD, access, emergency preparedness, what ifs and all that. Public services and infrastructure improvements. We want to make sure that we have accessible roads and that we're not really conflicting against anything that would impact how successful we are here. Housing and lodging, again, talking about not just the teams and not just visitors, but the workforce that come along with it. And, so there are other, if we are really expecting this, and we are expecting this type of influx, what does it do to our workforce? How do we recruit workforce? And that goes into, I guess, economic development. And then transportation, how do we get people to and from the games? How do we get them around within the city? Because again, we are expecting that a lot of these people aren't from here. I don't know that there will be sufficient rental cars in the area and all that. So there are considerations across that, and there are people with both from all 3 of these agencies and outside agencies, KU, city, and county, assigned in each of these areas. So it is truly cross-agency effort. And then Culture and Experiences branch is what Ruth and I are overseeing. So we're overseeing marketing, promotion, activities, both activities that happen in Lawrence and activities that are enhanced because of the World Cup. We're special events, and we'll talk about that in a minute. Signage and communication with multinational visitors, and beautification and placemaking, which includes art. So here are the basic responsibilities. Now, again, we have a branch, Culture and Experiences, and within that we have task forces and groups, and these are those task forces and groups and what they're responsible for. We do have so far, and this doesn't count my staff that I'm recruiting one by one, approximately 20 to 25 people within this branch, and they've been assigned a specific, or they've self-assigned in many cases that were recruited because of their either their profession within the city that supports these things, or any knowledge that they have in any of these particular areas. So some of these are from nonprofits, some of them are from KU. So we, again, even though even this goes down to cross agency, we have, for instance, Mike Logan from the Granada and all that is for the fan experiences. We have Jackie Becker, right? That was on this board again for concert promotion. So there's also private individuals who we're recruiting. But again, we're tasked with doing the marketing, coming up with the materials, the name, the branding, how we communicate. Community cultural engagement, what I mentioned earlier. Let me see what the next slide is. Does it break it down? Okay, no.
Yeah, our objectives.
Okay, no, but this is good. What we want to promote is Lawrence, as Lawrence, right? We don't know who the visitors are, but people aren't going to come here to get a replica of their country. They want to come and hopefully visit and understand what Lawrence is about. So we're not just doing new things, we're also promoting throughout the community things that we're already doing. So our calendar of events is going to be a lot of our ongoing summer events. Again, we want people to come in, on their free days when they're not at games or doing something else, to come in and be able to enjoy what we're doing. So a lot of the marketing is going to be toward those day visitors that might be landing in or staying in Kansas City or the surrounding area. But then we'll also be doing some and included in that, we're talking about our culture. So we have Watkins Museum, and we'll be working with some other cities as well on a 5 historic site tour. So again, get to the culture and heritage of Lawrence. We'll partner with Clinton Marina for their Friday night concerts. And again, this will all be, and then this also happens to be 4th of July that year. It's within that window, so, bigger celebration. So again, want to promote what we're already doing. But the second part is a fan experience, which is directly more tied to the World Cup. So viewing parties, just celebrations around games, around important games. It might be a USA game, might be, Mexico game or whatever, where we can create an event around that. And that's where we have all the players, the venues, we have the logistics to worry about that, the cost of doing all that. And if the question's going to come up, we don't know where the money is coming from or how much it's going to cost. And that's where that's our, I guess, our directive right now is think about the things that you want to do and let's come up with a cost so we can figure out how we fund this. Some of the things are going to happen whether we want it or not. Fan experience does not have to happen. Transportation is going to happen. And, there are things that are going to cost. PD is going, they're going to have, some costs associated with safety, even just because of the sheer visitors. So, but we want to be able to capitalize on that and, create some experiences for those that are coming and those that are visiting as well as residents. It's not just for outsiders, right? We want to create celebration around this for everybody. And part of that as well is engaging with bars and restaurants for viewing parties, for incentives for them to be open on specific days and to offer specials. And then sponsorships, of course, we need to figure out how we fund a lot of this. So we'll be working with economic development, that branch to come up with packages and as well as with the retail and bar and restaurants is using them and Downtown Lawrence Incorporated, who's also part of this, to get the retailers involved. And hopefully it won't just be downtown, it'll be citywide. It's just a concentration might be here. Venues for the fan experience, I'm sorry, keep going back and forth, I keep thinking of things. Venues, we have not really, that Rock Chalk Park may be off limits. We don't know that for sure. We will not know that. We don't know who the country is, what type of security, what type of following they're going to have, but it's going to be likely restricted. So but we have a list of venues where we would be doing things. Mass Street, South Park, Rock Chalk, as options. The stadium, which doesn't look likely at this point because of construction schedules and all that, but of where we do this. So all these things are being considered by the fan experience and cultural experiences committees. So we meet probably 5 or 6 meetings a month at this point. You probably have more than I do. And then finally, volunteer coordination, how to recruit volunteers, where they're needed, and how we manage that. So that's also part of our responsibilities. So, all right, so again, these are our objectives. I mentioned already most of these in my conversation, but not only do we want to create some unmistakable experiences, but we also want to, through our current events, but also bring some events that are tailored specific to World Cup, attract day visitors to Lawrence. We have a limited number of hotel rooms. We have a limited number of Airbnbs, and so we think that the majority of our traffic is going to be day visitors. Again, we still need to keep everybody else entertained and energized, but I think the constant flow will be through those day visitors. And that's where we're going to be targeting a lot of the money. We're not going to be sending ads, and I'm talking for Explore Lawrence, doing advertising in Spain to have them come here. We're going to do it for the people who are already here and can easily drive into the area. And again, just events and plan and execute, which is the coordination with the other branches, and create a legacy beyond 2026, so that it doesn't just end there. One of the things we talked about, and I think we did, it came up, and I'll mention it here, it came up in the master plan, was about the TGP, as that being an option, because it will, it'll bump up, but looking at maybe as elevating that so that there is funding for some of these things, and that builds a legacy for tourism, that builds the economic development, continues to build economic development. So we're looking at ways to do that, but that's, or other ways, through art, through, placemaking that stays beyond, those 26 days of the World Cup. So those are our primary objectives here. Okay.
So, yeah, I'll just highlight, these are the Kansas City-specific matches. Something that I think is important to highlight is it was a huge deal that Kansas City got a quarterfinal. No one expected it. They were hoping to have 4 matches, and they got, so I don't know if you saw that it was a very quick graph that came up of who was playing in the quarterfinals in Qatar, but we're talking Portugal, England, France, Brazil. So a point that I try to emphasize when I talk about this is while other cities are going to be sort of waning in visitors, we're going to be ramping up. We have huge teams with huge fan bases. There could obviously be a Cinderella story, but chances are a huge team with a huge fan base that of a team that's doing well is going to be moving in. And so our work is going to accelerate as we get to July 11th. And the next.
Yeah, and this demonstrates it. So this column right here is the quarterfinal. So it's only 4 cities at that point. Right? All these other cities that would have already kind of finished the tournament. So
Yeah, it was a big deal for us to get that. And the next,
Okay.
so our question, this might be a tiny bit out of order, except we just want to always focus on how we want to showcase Lawrence to the world. So not just a fun place to have a great time, but there are going to be CEOs of Fortune 50 companies here. Even higher heads of state that might be looking for a place to start a satellite business in the US. We also know from the visitor economy now, it used to be that people got a job somewhere and then they moved there. Now with remote work, people are like, I could see myself living here, and they can work from anywhere. So not just international travelers, but travelers from the US who are like, wow, I really want to be here. So we really want to put our efforts, and because our branch is the most forward facing, the other branches have to get, we want a seamless event, obviously without any horrible things happening, but we want people to come here and say, I either want to come back, or I want to live here, or I want to start a business here.
I think that's
And
it.
I think that's the last one.
Oh.
So these are our community as Luis was saying, this is a great time to have visitors come, June and July. So we are not inventing a Lawrence experience out of scratch, which is very lucky. So people can experience what it's like to live in Lawrence and Douglas County just by, events that are already on our calendar. Our branch has a huge master calendar that we're putting like match games and these event dates and everything. So we know that there will be a big calendar that people will share. And that's really the last slide. Does anyone have questions?
I have a question. I know nothing about soccer. I don't even know how many players are on a team.
26. at least for the World Cup.
11 on the
At
field.
11
Oh,
on the
at
field.
one time.
Yeah,
22 total.
yeah.
So what I'm thinking is, there's gotta be other people living here. And, you know, so, I emailed Gail and said, you know, it'd be nice to have some classes, one-day classes on soccer and this and that, you know, what you need to know to appreciate, because I really would. I mean, I don't know anything about strategy.
Yeah,
don't
I
know.
would love it. Like,
Well,
what does it mean?
It's funny, because I
Yeah.
did just, and not that they necessarily would be the experts on this, but I did email Sporting Caw Valley today, the director, and I said, hey, it would be good to get you involved in here for the education aspect of it. I mean, both physical and, you know.
So I hope so.
How are you a fan? How do you
I also,
be a fan?
I also think our city manager played soccer in college.
I think that's
It'd
true.
be great if you were the teacher.
Oh, okay. I can't commit him.
And you
I
could
can't.
teach.
Yeah, I was going to ask about youth programs for
Yeah.
this time, just ramping up excitement about soccer, because KC is a huge soccer hub in terms of youth soccer, like Kansas City, I think Kansas City, Dallas, Chicago. And Kansas City is a soccer city, so
Yep.
ramping up those programs at Sporting Caw Valley would be awesome. Also, that last question, how do we want to showcase Lawrence to the world? That really tugs at like the Lawrence, like pride heartstrings, doesn't it? That's
Yeah,
Okay.
absolutely. Yeah, we will be reaching out to Sporting Caw Valley and the Parks and Rec, and, you know, making sure that, I mean, I would love for the kids to get an opportunity to volunteer if they can be out during practices. I mean, everything is very proprietary and everything's very locked down. But if we have a team that is generous with their time and we can plug some of the kids in to do something, I just think that's a dream to,
Oh, that'd be neat.
yeah.
The high schools could be locations for that. They already do some, like the high school players do some camps for little
In the
kids.
summer?
Yeah.
Well, my grandson's going to one tomorrow,
Okay.
so.
I have a question.
Yeah.
Are you done? I'm
I'm
sorry.
done.
Have you, I just feel like this is beyond anyone's ability to really grasp. And I'm thinking, so the Qatar doesn't feel like a place I want to call a local, you know, city manager. Have you reached out to Brazil or any, you know, for what do regional cities hosting the group play or quarterfinal play, what are the experiences of a city that is not, you're not talking about hosting the Olympics where you build the infrastructure, you're talking about using your existing infrastructure. I guess I'm just curious.
A lot of that is falling to KC 26 to work with those communities and learn from them. They are traveling a lot. They have a lot of back and forth, and then that information comes more to us from them.
And
We're learning best practices.
And just even a little
in this.
clarity that we are receiving lately about what FIFA allows for, or the agreements for broadcast rights, you know, what we can do. So that information, what we can do is trickling in and funneling through KC 26. So, we wouldn't be able to do that, but it will.
Yeah, and I guess I feel as someone who has been very privileged to have done some traveling in Europe and South America, that we are not prepared for the cultural clash is not the word I want to use, but it's one thing to talk about, I mean, I don't know, it's so in the zeitgeist right now, are America's reaction to non-Americans in the culture. And it's one thing to talk about that when you're talking about a few individuals, a dozen. But this is on a scale that is just unprecedented. We don't know how to anticipate the expectation. I mean, I would hope, I don't know anybody who's traveled to a World Cup game, so I can't imagine what it's like. But I think that it's going to be expectations of not just a single individual, but many, many individuals, that there will be certain things, and we don't really know how to.
So one of our community partners is KU's Office of International Affairs, correct? And they've reached out to us and said, we want to offer you assistance in cross-cultural relationships, even before we know who the home base team is. So we certainly need to do internal sensitivity training, and as well as for business owners, for the workforce that's coming in. We've talked about that. So there's a resource for us to be able to do that. We don't know how that's going to look yet, but they are involved in the conversation of assisting us through that.
And I hope that you
adjustment period.
Yeah, and also finding ways to distill that information and add it to the communication component as well.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. So,
Yep.
I mean, I know you guys know what's in front of you, but at the same time, as someone who's taking it in, it is
better.
almost overwhelming thinking about the implications.
I don't want to take the blinders off.
Thank you.
Taylor, you have more?
Well, so you say, kept talking about transportation, so busing from Lawrence to KC and back, or?
Well, because they're talking about park and rides at various locations in the region. So we are in that path, so how, and that's not my job, that's, there are transportation from KU city, and the city, and county, I guess, are working on the details of what the expectations are, what the resources are, both local and from outside. But yes, it would be within the city and out of the city to KC and back.
And then my mind went straight to like live on mass type stuff when you were talking. That's kind of the idea, shutting down.
One of the ideas, correct.
Gotcha.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. When do we do it? And all that is what we're trying to develop. What are the key dates that would work best? And some of these things you won't know because the games, you don't know who's going to win and who's going to move, so, but USA games are, 3 of them are known because the 3 host countries get a guaranteed spot. So we know 3 of the games, where we know the games that are happening in KC. So again, we can work around those. And then some of them are going to be just moving targets as the tournament develops.
Is there a cohort within your guys' task force that is looking at showcasing the history of, because you talked about a lot
Yes, we do. Well, one of the, I don't know how they break down, but within cultural
heritage.
and as a matter of fact, Gail, who mentioned, you mentioned Gail earlier, she's part of that task force as well as the Watkins Museum, and Haskell and KU are all involved. And there'll be, involvement from the Spencer, and, so we're hoping to, really promote what Lawrence is, history, heritage, natural, beauty, and so.
And Gail has a bus.
That's right.
Yeah, she can take people around. It's like, so that's good.
Yeah.
Anything else?
Go team.
All right.
Yeah. Thank you so
Yay,
much
soccer.
for
Better
that.
you than us.
All right. There being no other questions or comments, we go to the roundtable and a director's report.
Okay, which is first? I don't remember. It's me first? Okay. All right, I have a few notes here. We're still working on the budget. We're still facing a $1.8 million deficit in our department, which is a part of the city's $6.5 million general fund gap for 2026. So we're looking at every part of our department, not just the rec centers, but also trails and maintenance, and to see how we can achieve the required reductions with the least amount of impact, both visible and physical and all that. So we are having those conversations daily, trying to, really figure how to do this the right way. So we're also focusing right now on scholarship programs and, access strategies to make sure that whatever we do is protects equity. And then we are planning on, with our community engagement and communications team, we're going to be, I think this was mentioned in the article, Lawrence Journal World article yesterday, that we're going to be taking conversations to the community about access fees and membership fees. We really want feedback, and that includes coming to the advisory board. I think we're still expecting to do that in June. And then just a few key dates that follow that. July 8th is when the recommended budget to the city manager by the city manager is presented to the commission. And then the following week, we'll follow that up with the commission on the proposed budget for Parks and Recreation. So we'll come to you guys in June and get your feedback. There will be, as part of this, we'll be doing focus groups, community surveys, pop-up events at the rec centers, just to get some feedback from the public. All right, and then other than that, we're in full season mode now with our parks open, our playgrounds are full every day. The trails are, up and open and being maintained. Outdoor spaces are seeing heavy use, and you'll see mowing, you'll see new plantings, new flowers up and down Mass and at our city facilities and some of the city gateways. Yeah, this is the time. We I think we're pretty much caught up. We've probably been at it a couple of weeks now, so I've less complaints about, things growing as we get to them. But we may, I just want to, also set the stage for saying we might see some of these things in the long term as well, based on how our budget works out this year or for next year. So, but we're supporting everything we did last year. There were a couple of reductions in some parks last year that are now more visible because the parks are back open. Mutt Run is one of them. I think some of you might have gotten an email. They've been sending emails. So we have a trail that grew into a trail that was never planned, and we started maintaining it, and now we're like, well, we can't do that anymore. And so there was an email going on around that asking for us to be able to do that. So, but things will become now with the season a little bit more obvious. But we are, maintaining the majority of our operations this year. Reduced proposals would take effect next year. Outdoor Aquatic Center opens Monday, May 26th, Labor Day, and expected to have a full season this year, closing September 1st, I believe is the day. Originally, we were thinking with the renovation project that we'd have a half season, but it's going to take longer to get through the permitting and the bidding process. So it looks like our window for the construction is October, so we'll be able to have the full season at the Outdoor Aquatic Center. So being October, I think we'll expect that bid documents will go out in July. So depending on what numbers we get back through that process, we'll be inviting the public to help us with input as to other amenities that we'll be putting into the pool. Right now, the design is the shallow end and the 50-meter, and everything else will be kind of add alternates to see what the cost of those are before we start adding some of the other options that we had originally planned on doing. So city splash pads open on Tuesday, May 27th, and they also will be open through Labor Day. I think those are all the updates I have. Any questions about any of that?
Louis, the issue of user fees just keeps, keeps coming up. And the compelling argument for me is we're an outlier in terms of comparable cities. And I think that really, I don't know how other people react, but that makes it a lot like, okay, fine, we're the outlier here. And I think as Marilyn talked several, years ago, we talking about scholarships. I think that's an important piece as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, this is absolutely, I think I've said it a few times, access is important to me. It has to all of us. So we're looking at ways to address all these concerns. We want to hear what the concerns are so we can address them. And I have heard them. We've heard them. So we're looking at ways to minimize that. And I don't know that in Lawrence where an outlier works. I've tried it. It doesn't work here. So, so I don't think that's a compelling enough reason. It's really what the value of it is if it goes away for somebody. What is the value to keep it as an option? And I'm not saying that this is the only answer. There may be other ones. There are other ones, but they're not on the table. And this is an answer to avoid almost $2 million reduction in our budget. Not the only option, but one that we want to present as an option for the governing body to say, yes, let's do this. And we want feedback as well. It's not going to, hey, here we want feedback. We're going to present it in July and develop it further. We have another important date is September 16th when the final budget gets adopted. So between July and September, there's time to develop that further. And and it will be a policy decision, and we'll do the best to make sure that it's, reflective of what the community is willing to pay for the value and able, and if the governing body doesn't want that, then we have another alternative. We have a second plan. So, but is it rare that cities don't have a fee to cover these things? Yes, it is. But, and we're just making that case, as a statement.
Just a comment on what John said. I don't like the word outlier because it seems to connote that this was accidental in some way. It's just a data thing that happened. From my perspective, we're a leader in providing access to all. So this is not accidental. This has been an intentional thing. And I do understand that it may need to change, but I don't find the word outlier compelling at all, based upon what I've done in the last however many years to provide leadership around access for all.
Thank you.
I too keep hearing a lot about fees and all of the cuts that are happening from mainly young families and their concern with it. I received a couple emails after our last meeting, and I'm not going to read the entirety of all the emails that I got, but one of the questions that was posed in the email was about if we charge folks to use, like, entry fee for all the AAU and volleyball tournaments out at Rock Chalk, because we have a lot. They did the numbers based upon the data that they had access to, and what they were suggesting is that just in the month of March alone, if we charge $5 at the gate for access to the AAU tournaments and volleyball tournaments at Rock Chalk, we would be able to gain $54,000 alone just in that month if you charge $5 based upon the amount coming in. I think some of the main concerns that I heard was, people coming into Lawrence like needing to pay to get into the facility, not the residents, and that was their concern. They also, I heard a couple people pose the kind of the argument that if they're going to pay to use the facilities, but Rock Chalk Park, especially between the months of March and July or August, have so much tournaments that they can't use a lot of the things that are there because of whatever, they have a problem with paying the money to attend Rock Chalk Park when the weekends when they're off work to be able to use the basketball facilities, volleyball, the soccer, whatever. And that was a concern that was pretty compelling to me to empathize with. Yes.
I've received that email, so I've seen all those.
Yeah.
And we are not ignoring any of those questions.
Okay.
So-
I needed to speak on.
No, absolutely.
What I'm hearing from.
Yeah, no, and you should, I appreciate it, you should, but I did receive it, so,
Can I do a point of clarification too, because there is some discrepancy with Rock Chalk Park
Yeah.
versus Sports Pavilion Lawrence.
Thank you.
Because it's a.
I
it's
think
a-
people use it interchangeably,
Right,
not
right,
intentionally,
but I
I mean,
want to
they
make
just.
sure that we
Yeah.
use it correctly at this meeting.
Yeah,
so
no,
thanks.
yeah, but thank you, but no, so, but no, we received that, and I'm not saying that that's off the table, charging tournament spectators, I'm not, so we're looking at every alternative to make this as palatable as possible for residents of Lawrence.
In your community engagement, I think it's important to signal to the community that you have heard about these things, charging to get into SPL, or whatever other, the lack of access because of the tournaments. I think it'd be good for you to say, okay, we've heard these things, because otherwise people feel
Think that we
like
haven't heard,
there's
yeah.
a tone deafness. So that would just be a suggestion.
And this is a forum where I can say I've heard these things. So I do appreciate
Yeah.
hearing it, and that's what I was saying earlier. And I think it's still in my director's report, so I'll say, I need to hear these things. If you receive the email and you don't forward it, we can't address them, we don't, what I said earlier, I want to make sure that our department is accessible to the public. They can send us an email and copy, send it to you and copy us in, and if they don't, please do that, because we need to hear from the community as much as you do. If you feel free to say, I'm copying Luis Ruiz, and I'll receive it, and often we will respond, depending on if there's a response required or needed or not, but we do that every day. We get emails in the general email box that Mark responds to every day, Lindsay responds to every day, Porter responds to every day, I respond to every day. So it's not outside of our responsibility to communicate with the public. And I want to make sure that we are hearing from them and that they know we're hearing from them. So I appreciate that, Marilyn.
I have one, and this is probably not, I don't know. I've got a question, and that is something that you said earlier about the Mutt Run and the trail that became, which of course happens in any sort of green space. And the first thing I thought of was the river trails in North Lawrence those were developed by mountain bikers and maintained by mountain bikers. And in fact, there's a memorandum of understanding between the Lawrence Mountain Bike Club to maintain those trails, which prompted me to think about, well, we are engaged with the community. How can we engage the community to think of solutions? I don't believe that there is a good way to stand up a nonprofit like analogous with Mountain Bike Club. But what can we do to elicit volunteers to perhaps alleviate some of the staffing, especially if it was a volunteers supported by city staff, by Parks and Rec staff, as opposed to just some organization where we're talking about facilities. I know that, of course, nothing is decided yet, but I just want to throw it out there that we should be engaging in seeking solutions, that do in fact engage the community. There has to be some way to reduce this problem. Maybe we won't be able to get away from fees altogether, but maybe we can, anybody 12 and younger, no fees. Anybody 18 and younger, no fees. Maybe these facilities never have fees. Specific facilities never have fees. I guess I'm looking for an assurance that there will be hope, that there will be an attempt to find some, and I know there are, but I guess I want to encourage community involvement in finding some solutions.
Okay, I appreciate that. I will say the clock is ticking, and
Yeah.
unfortunately, and we're going up against not necessarily a calendar limit, but a meetings limit, right? The
Yeah.
approval of the budget has to happen in September. So while I think that there are, with what you said, there's so many areas to explore, the timing is what's critical right now, and decisions that affect us in 2026 have to be solidified, within, 4 months.
And I appreciate that I'm throwing out a thing. It's like, oh, here's another thing for you to do. What can
Yeah,
we do?
Yeah, as an advisory board specifically.
Can we be reaching out
Yeah.
to try and engage with these problems with people? I don't know. I guess I am
appreciate the
not,
question.
I know some people, but I guess what I would like to know, can you offer me a staff person to be a liaison for some effort that we might be able to at least start the ball rolling towards?
You have something to
some-
say? Oh,
I just wanted to, you haven't spoken about, but it's probably important that we are working with, sorry.
Can you go up to the mic?
All right. Not used to this side. Hi, everybody. Porter Arneal, Assistant Director. We are working closely with the communications and community engagement team right now to develop a very thoughtful community engagement process. We're still working with them to really determine the best way to do this. As Louise pointed out, there is a time issue. So there will be opportunities for people to engage. Certainly you all can help steer people in the right direction. So to Marilyn's point, they're heard. They know they've been heard. They're participating in the conversation. They're sharing their input and ideas, all of that stuff. We just haven't quite gotten there yet.
And you're talking about solutions outside of just cut this. How else can that be done?
Yeah.
And some of those, like I said, I think, developing the plan and getting some momentum behind it can still happen. They can happen concurrently.
Yeah.
Whatever changes are made don't have to be permanent, right? So, we can decide to stop mowing something that can change, in 3 months when a community group comes up and say, now, there are issues with volunteers and trying to, the dependability issue, city equipment and things like that, but conversations around creative solutions that bring the community in other ways and in their wallet. I
Well,
understand what you're saying.
and personnel is always a big, and it should be a big ticket item. We should be paying people for their value, but we also, it seems in this situation, could lean on engaged and community members to help fill the gap.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah,
We'll
thank you.
take in consideration. Lee.
A concern that you have, and I know the rest of the board probably has too, but just to back up a little bit on the sports pavilion and the intent of the pavilion when it was open, I think, and Mark, you might be able to help me, we were looking at somewhere around 40 weekends that we'd bring in tournaments to utilize that facility to bring in economic impact with 1 cent sales tax and fill in the hotels and helping the community in that way with that tax base. You get into a point now where we're not the only game in town. Hy-Vee Center, Wichita, Omaha, and you start getting into a bidding war to try to get these tournaments here, they go someplace else. And then you lose the economic impact too. So it's a balancing act that we got to be careful of in trying to sell this thing. And some of the tournaments, especially volleyball, I mean, they have the option, and they pay $2,000, $3,000, $4,000 a day to utilize the facility per court, and then they charge an admission to kind of recoup some of their expenses to help pay officials. And so there's kind of a balancing act there, because they're not going to do it to lose money, and we don't want to either, but we don't want to lose that economic impact of those tournaments coming here because they have other options to go someplace else. So we got to be careful of that as well. But I know when it was built, it's not a neighborhood recreation center. It really isn't.
No.
It's a regional recreation center. I mean, how many kids ride their bikes to the sports pavilion? My kids can't. It's too far out there. It was never intended to be, I don't believe, a neighborhood recreation. Look at the number of youth basketball games are played out there, youth soccer. The practices that are held there are played out there rather than 14 elementary gyms that we used to have to do. So that helped us so much in providing for the community that is no cost, because they're paying for that activity, whether it be a class, whether it be a youth sports, whether it be, again, at some point, in my belief, and we went through 3 comprehensive studies or somebody looking at this, we are different. We were out there, we didn't charge. And they look at you like, what? You guys nuts? No wonder we're kicking this can down the road a little bit, because at some point in time, nothing's free. So what is that $1, $2? If I don't ever use the treadmill and it breaks down, who pays for it? Do I pay for it? I don't use it. Do taxpayers pay for it? Do we have to raise property tax? I don't want to pay any more property tax. So there's got to be something that we can do to help, because nothing's free anymore. It's just not.
Well, the penny sales tax is not a penny sales tax.
If you want it, somebody's got to pay for it. We just got to figure out how to pay for it.
I mean,
And if we could keep kids free, that's the whole bottom line to me. Free access to the kids 18 and under, 17 and under. And we utilize it a lot, all the recreation facilities. I mean, people got to pay to go to the pool. People got to go play golf. People got to pay to go to a class. It's not free. Even the old summer playgrounds that used to be free. We had 8, 10, 12 parks that were free. It was free daycare. Now it's, what is it? It took us a long time to get where we are now. When we went to a general sign-up of $5 just to have your kid enrolled in the summer playground. And now I think we may have 3 parks, not 14 anymore. And it costs weekly, bi-weekly, monthly for those kids to attend those programs. Because you just can't, you have to pay the instructors.
but the parents are paying for them now.
Right, unless there are scholarships, and they can't, and we provide scholarships to those, because we never want to turn a child away for an inability to pay. That's been our motto, ongoing, and so I still think we could do that.
Thank you, Lee. Yeah, tough conversations to have, but.
Yeah, I mean, the whole key is to provide access for people who can't afford whatever the membership fees are gonna
Right.
be.
Yeah.
I think that's the population that everybody's worried about. They may say they're worried about themselves, but in point of fact, they could pay some amount.
And I think that's important. Part of our community engagement is to find out, what exactly are you saying? What exactly is the community saying when they say, no, you can't do this? We need to get a better understanding of that, and.
Yeah, that article a day or two ago, I think ended with Bob Shum, who may have been involved in making promises early on, saying, no, this is something you're paying for through your taxes. And I think people believe that.
They do.
And I keep hearing you guys say, well, nothing was ever promised.
No, I think it was promised, it just wasn't.
Or it wasn't,
done. It
whatever,
wasn't.
codified or whatever, but in the citizen's mind, it was.
but it's no longer viable. At least without reductions, we can keep them free. We're gonna have to reduce a lot more in parks and open spaces, and because it's a one department budget. We dole it out as we need in order to do what we're doing right now, but the 1.8 has to come from somewhere, and if it's not offset slightly by fees, then it's a great reduction somewhere else. If we're saying keep everything else in rec centers as the way it is, okay, then parks are gonna get impacted, because it's a department that, is affected. And even though we're trying to hold to the balancing act process and the directives there as much as possible, having fees helps us not have to take such drastic reductions as, closing parks and, so it is literally, quite literally a balancing act. It's like if we don't do this, then this is affected.
And I think the public should see what that alternative is. Because if we just say we're putting on fees, and we don't say, or we're closing this, then they just see this as not a choice.
Yeah.
This is the mandate.
And it is one of those connections that needs to be made. It's not just about access fees too. For this building, it's protecting those things that are truly free, that should be parks and trails and, and mountain bike trails. And so it's protecting the entirety of the program, by doing that. We don't want to charge for parks, that's not even on the table. I have gotten emails, how dare you charge? I'm like, we're not ever talking about that, it can go down. But it does help support those things that we're doing. There's still going to be some reductions. We still have to do them. We're not saying we're going to find $1.8 million off the, membership fees. So there will be some reductions, but those are minimized in both the rec centers, in our programming offerings, as well as in the green spaces that are maintained by the revenue that comes in otherwise. So, and this is the conversation we want to engage the public, so there's a better understanding.
I hope it's not a rushed conversation, because you keep saying, we have all this community engagement plan, but then you also say, we have a tight timeline.
They're both true.
And if people say, well, they said they had community engagement, but it was only 2 weeks, and then you're going to have another problem. So.
Well, that's why we have our communications professionals working on that, so that they're not saying, I didn't do a good enough job. We have a team of people working on this, so. All right, that's the end of my report. I think we're still on that, so the next item would be the roundtable, I think, right?
Right, correct.
Yeah, and thank you for all of your comments.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Do any board members have items that they want to bring forward? Yes, Marilyn?
I'm wondering if we can get a presentation on the Lawrence Loop and what is currently happening and what is planned for the near future.
We can do that.
That'd be great.
We can do that.
Awesome. Anybody else?
So that's a future agenda item, so that
Yes.
would be on that. And I think, well, June might be, we can do that in June as well. I'm expecting that's when we're going to bring, so that's a second proposed agenda item, would be the fees presentation, wherever we are at that point. Again, it's going to be a month before we go to the commission, so it's like the direction we're heading. What was the question?
Do we want to try and do something?
No, that'd be a standalone.
Yeah.
A standalone what?
Communications department about what they wanted to do for you.
I was going to say, it sounds like if that's going to be a lot.
Right, for the June meeting.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, and I'm not sure what form it'll take. We're still working on the timeline, on the messaging, on all that, but how about we put a tentative or tentative for June, and as we go through that, we can confirm it. We meet a
Yep.
week out from the agenda, or 2 weeks out, and we can confirm it then. So, but I don't think that has to be a very long update as well. That can be done in a couple of minutes. We don't need
Okay.
a big presentation. So I think we can pull that off.
Okay, yeah, I mean, I would like to hear it, but, yeah.
The June
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
meeting, the June meeting, I will say, is the 9th.
Yeah.
So it's less than a month, just to give you
Okay.
perspective too.
All right, so thank you. Thanks for the reminder.
Future agenda item as well, I'd be curious about data and like presentation on amount of kids involved, the youth programs that we offer and the amount of kids that are involved in all those youth programs and access to those programs and, yeah, just hearing all that kind of stuff.
Okay, so, and
Yeah, go ahead, sorry.
And we can do that. What has become evident through some of this is that one of the downfalls of not having access fees is that we don't count kids as they walk in unless they're enrolled in a program, right? We're not tracking. There's no requirement that they come and tap at the door so we know how many times a child came in. You know, so some of the program data, if that's what you're asking about, the attendance and all that might be.
No, I'm talking about like the youth sports programs, like the
Okay.
T-ball, all the.
Yeah, we
things
can-
like that, yeah.
Just want numbers, because we don't have to.
Well, yeah, I mean, I just hear from young families that, you know, maybe they don't know when signups are for things. The website's hard to navigate and all that kind of stuff to sign up kids.
Which is fine, I just want to make sure that, I mean, we could bring numbers, but what do you need attached with that numbers when we present that? So that there's a,
Pure curiosity about
Okay.
the amount, the programs
it
that we offer.
informative,
I mean,
data-driven.
we talk a lot about trails and the parks and all that and recs and all this stuff. I'm curious what we all offer. You know, I know what it was offered when I was a kid. I know it seemed like there was a lot of people involved. I'm curious about all that.
okay.
So point of clarification, you said sports, but are you talking about dance, gymnastics, all these other programs?
Yeah, all the programs, everything that we offer. Yeah.
Yeah, that may be just some aggregated demographic information.
Yep.
It'll be probably in written form, if that's okay, just a report? Okay. Just want to make sure I'm clear on what you want, so that, you know, we're answering the appropriate questions.
Thank you for asking for that. Anything else?
This is a question that I don't know you want to answer or can answer, but I've read, and this is a budget question more or less, about the early retirement that's been offered citywide and how that's going, and how will that affect the budget maybe for next year, or is it intended to help the budget, or?
Yeah, it's intended to help the budget. That, you know, it was an incentive for people so that any HR reductions, which are permanent if you don't hire back that position, would be sustainable. Now, what I will say is that, you know, the way that it will trickle down, it may not be that retired position is the one that's gone forever. It might get backfilled and you get a vacancy somewhere else, but that was an incentive to have a sustainable, and I think I mentioned that, you know, a few meetings ago, that the really most sustainable way of reducing costs is through personnel, because you're paying them no matter what, right? As opposed to, we can choose not to replace a park bench. We can choose not to, you know, to paint lines, pickleball lines on a court, but you have to pay somebody. So that is kind of the idea. Where can we reduce if you're close to retirement? You know, we're giving that option. It's fully voluntary. I don't know how it's going yet. We have not received anything.
So it could affect or change the department structure, depending on personnel.
Yeah, it could. It could, but we don't know even
Right.
who's retiring. It may be
Depends on
nobody.
who retires. Yeah,
Yeah.
that was the question, that was it. Because I just read that, and I know that was brought up in the past also.
Yeah, so this time they did it, I guess. It's that serious.
Anything else? Our next meeting is Monday, June 9th. do we have a motion to adjourn? Oh, yeah, did you have something
Did you
else?
want to codify the agenda, I mean, the presentation?
Oh, yeah, so that's what we're trying to get into the
Although it was
practice of, is
tentative.
doing no, let's do that. And it's also about, we decided that we would vote on future agenda items so that the board all had, so if you want to put forward the motion to,
We're still on F, so.
Okay.
let's take that.
so it's for the,
Future agenda items for the Lawrence Loop presentation, B's presentation, and then the data
Okay,
report.
so should we vote on them individually and just to definitely include them in the future, but not necessarily, we won't know exactly when we'll be seeing those, is that
I
correct?
think they could all be in June. And like I said, the data for the other would be just, a report on here's our programs, here's enrollment. And you can ask questions after that, once you have it.
Well, can
So
I,
you can do it however you like. It's your board. It's the board's decision on
Well,
how
I-
they want to codify it.
I myself move to indeed have all of these items addressed whenever. Does anybody have a second on my motion? We still have a quorum. Oh, yes, we do have a second. All in favor? Aye. Any
Aye.
opposed? No. So that passed. Thank you for
you.
that. You'll have to remind me every time, sorry.
Well, I have a little cheat sheet that I will give you.
Yeah, thank you.
I'm sorry I didn't. I did it for Vicki real quick, and I need to clean it up a little bit. I'll get you that, yeah.
Good deal. Now, I believe we have reached the end of the agenda. Do we have a motion to adjourn?
I move we adjourn.
Second, all in favor? Any opposed? No. Thank you very much, everyone.
Thank you all.